In just around 5 minutes, I want to share with you some super cool technique for creating drum and bass patterns inside Ableton Live that sound like this. And what I like so much about this technique is that it almost sounds like a real drummer, because instead of creating 1 bar or 2 bar drum loops on the MIDI grid inside the DAW that can easily sound really boxy, here you get ongoing variations that sound musical, because although it never sounds exactly the same, everything happens inside the feeling and creates a super cool flow. First thing we need is a drum rack, so we load some drum rack onto a MIDI track, and then we need a kick sample and a snare sample first. I'm going to pick this Iron Man kick sample, and you can pick any sample you like, but the important thing is that you need to add it twice to the drum rack. So here I also add it to the E1 pad, can be any other pad, and you'll see in a second why. Let's first add a snare drum. Here I'm also going to pick the Iron Man snare, and again we add it twice to the drum rack. The first row of kick and snare is for those notes that you always want to hear, so it's the foundation of your beat. And in my case there was a kick on the 1 of the first bar, and also a snare on the 2, and on the 2 on the second bar. And here you're free to just choose the notes that you want to have and that you always want to hear, because everything else is going to be randomly generated. And on the upper row of kick and snare we basically add all positions that haven't been used already, and it looks really silly, and if we would play it like this it would also sound really silly. But Ableton Live 11 has this amazing feature called chance, and we can just select all those additional notes here on those upper 2 rows and bring down the chance to maybe around 10%, which means only 1 time out of 10 times those notes will be triggered, and you can actually bring it down even more to like 8%, because we don't want many notes, we just want to have enough for making the beat a little unique, and we can actually check how it sounds now. Now we can add a right cymbal, because if we listen to the beat like this, it's a really broken beat, and it's really hard to actually hear the time signatures if variations are really tight on all those 16th notes. So I just pick any right cymbal. You can also pick any right cymbal and program at least like some quarter notes, but what I actually like is to have some accented note on all those quarter notes, and to have some notes with a lower velocity on the last 2 16th notes, which makes it some kind of jazzy pattern, which just, I feel like it gives the music a very cool flow, and it looks like this. Now, still, the beat seems a bit one-dimensional, and there are 2 more things that are important for making it sound as vivid as in the example you heard in the beginning. The first thing is that we want to add some other snares on. I mean, you could also choose the same sample you already used, but I prefer to look for just another snare drum. I'm going to pick the snare jazz, and what we're going to do with this snare drum is we're going to add some ghost notes, because drum and bass is some evolution of breakbeat, and breakbeat kind of came out of funk, and all those beats were filled with ghost notes, creating this kind of cool flow. I mean, in way slower tempos most of the time, but if you listen to drum and bass beats, you don't just have 1 layer of snare drum dynamics. It's actually at least 2 layers or even more layers, and that's what we're going to do with this 3rd snare. And let's check the prepared drum kit, because otherwise it's going to be a bit tricky. So you see there's a velocity effect that you can find under MIDI effects. And I just selected the random function. So by default it's on 0, so you have to change this to 64, which means that a new random value for the velocity is generated every time the note actually gets triggered. What's important is the filter setting, because you see I'm using a bandpass filter, and also selected that it reacts to the velocity. So this random value here makes the filter modulate, which gives us lots of different textures. And what we also need in order to trigger it is to create some pattern that looks like the one from the Iron Man kick and the Iron Man snare. So you can see it's exactly the same, like this upper row. Here I actually lowered the velocity because I started with just the ghost notes, but actually since we're using the random value for the velocity, it doesn't really matter, I think, what kind of velocity value you have here. And let's once just listen to those ghost notes so you understand what actually happens. And those ghost notes actually have some 34% chance, so it's way more likely to hear them. And Also, this way we often get those repetitions, so like 16th note blasts, which sound really cool and build this kind of overall carpet underneath the music that really glues everything together, because it sounds so much more boring without those ghost notes. And the last thing that helps is to actually select a groove, because if you don't add a groove, you basically have the typical 16th note pattern. And here I added the disco live feel. It's a tiny change, but I like adding it because it prevents your music from sounding too much like some in-the-box store beat, although we have so much variation here that it actually works without the groove as well. And that's basically how it works. If you're interested in also learning some cool rhythm trick that you can use in Ableton Live, but also any other DAW, I warmly invite you to watch this video. And also, if you liked it, I'm super happy if you can like the video, maybe leave a comment, and also subscribe to my channel, because there are also many more videos about music production you can find. Apart from that, I wish you lots of inspiration with whatever it is that you create, and hope to see you soon again at this channel. Bye!